is a disaster in the Atlantic waiting to impact our coastlines from Africa to England to Florida. It is the tsunami that will be generated if the currently erupting volcano called Cumbre Vieja, Old Summit, on the Canary island of Palma, actually collapses and a chunk of it breaks off and slides into the sea. If this happens, a major tsunami will almost immediately follow. It will impact the islands of the Caribbean, many of which are very low lying. It'll impact the Bahamas, Florida, will both be partly submerged, and the impact along the Moroccan coast about half an hour later will be devastating. It will also affect the south coast of the UK with waves of up to 5, maybe 7 meters. I know that we tend to think of tsunamis as normally belonging to the southern hemisphere. I mean, friends of mine were in the Maldives when they were engulfed and narrowly escaped with their lives. Nick actually saved Ali's life by helping her climb up onto a wardrobe and then onto the bathroom wall while their chalet on the beach filled up totally with water. He actually dived in and rescued the passports, which was pretty brave of him. And another friend of mine was anchored in Ao Chalon when the tsunami hit Phuket in Thailand. He had a load of anchor chain out, and when the wave came in, his boat just rose up on the wave and then sank down behind it. He got away with it, but Phuket mainly didn't. They had a terrible time. And actually, there's a long history of tsunamis around the British Isles. I mean, as far back as 600 BC, there was a 70-foot high wave which hit the east coast of Scotland, and that was caused by an underwater landslide off Norway. In 1755, Cornwall was hit by a 10-foot wave generated by the Lisbon earthquake. And more recently, in 2001, a very small tsunami hit the south coast of the UK. It was probably a meteo tsunami caused by the weather. These are more common around the Great Lakes between the sort of USA and Canada. They're caused by air pressure disturbances associated with fast-moving weather fronts and severe thunderstorm squalls and so on, but they do create tsunamis. For the UK, in the current situation, with the Palma Island eruptions happening, the prognosis is that if this mass of rock around the volcano does fall away into the sea, or even worse, the volcano totally collapses and allows a mass ingress of seawater, then the resulting tsunami will generate a wave of around 30 feet in height, impacting 6 hours later in Brighton and all along the south coast of England. And we should be very clear that all the Canary Islands are home to volcanoes, even the small one of Hero, which has been active in recent years, and Tenerife, which has a smoking time bomb in the middle of the island. Clearly, these volcanoes are all linked, and the events happening in the island of Palma may not be totally isolated. Scientists have been concerned of the results of the wider impact of a tsunami on Europe and the USA for a very long time. Back in 2001, a couple of American professors called Ward and Day wrote an extensive paper on Cumbre Vieja on Palma Island, looking at what would happen if the volcano collapsed into the sea. And this was long before it started its recent bout of activity. They described what would happen if this big lump of volcano slid down into the sea. And they reckoned the following would happen. First, there would be a 900-meter dome of water rise up into the air. 5 minutes later, that dome of water would collapse to around 500 meters. 10 minutes later, waves of around 500 meters would hit the other Canary Islands, possibly engulfing the other active volcanoes. And if that happened, the mind boggles at what would follow. Half an hour later, a wave of 50 to 100 meters would hit Africa, the Moroccan coast, causing devastation all the way along that seafront. 5 hours later, that wave would impact on South America, Newfoundland, Spain, and the UK. 9 hours later, a wave of 20 to 25 meters would hit Florida. And Florida is a very, very low-lying state. It's all a bit like a bad sci-fi movie on Netflix, but it is a reality of what could happen in the coming weeks. Today, a lot of work's being done by the French on this subject, led by one Professor Abadi in conjunction with Portuguese universities. Clearly, it's difficult to estimate the wave size, as that depends on how much of the volcano landslides into the sea and how quickly it happened. I mean, these are immense variables, but one thing is certain: the other Canary Islands will suffer dreadfully. Across the Atlantic, for Caribbean islands like Guadeloupe and Martinique, which are very low-lying, considerable devastation might well occur, as well as Florida, which is not that high above sea level at all. Apparently, tsunami waves decay pretty slowly, so they'll still be frighteningly high when they get to the other side of the Atlantic. The good news for those of us with boats is that if we're out sailing a little way offshore, then this very gentle giant of a tsunami swell will just lift us up and then gently deposit our boats in the trough behind it. For those of us with our boats in marinas and harbours, it probably will be that we'll end up like La Rochelle in France after a storm surge swept into that marina. Not one boat escaped without damage. I took these photographs myself, and I was on board my boat the night before. I just decided to go home rather than sit in the boat during a storm. Thank goodness I did, because otherwise I would have died. Well, that's it. If there are any solutions to this tsunami problem, I don't know what they are, and I don't think anybody else does either, which is probably why nobody talks about this Atlantic disaster, which is possibly in waiting for us in the coming weeks. As a source for this video, I mainly used Wikipedia, to which I subscribe and give them a small amount of money each month. I think everyone should do that. Wikipedia is a wonderful source of information. You can, for no money at all, subscribe to my channel, but if you don't, I don't blame you at all. Anyway, fair winds, safe landfalls, or safe time at sea if a tsunami does happen. Bye. So far, French Canal Route to the Mediterranean has sold over 2,700 copies. And the Gentle Sailing Guide to the Mediterranean, that's down the outside coast, has also sold over 1,850 copies so far. If you want a copy of any of my sailing books, then they're available as instant downloads from gentlesailing.com, all one word. Or if you want my articles and descriptions about sailing, you'll find them at michaelbryant.com.